Every child in Tamriel knows the name Tiber Septim, the conqueror of the continent, the hero of the empire, the man who became a god. His name echoes through the pages of history as a unifier, a leader, a symbol of strength and ambition. The myths of his reign are woven into the very fabric of Tamriel's history. To many, he is the pinnacle of human greatness, a visionary who brought the empire to its greatest ever heights. Yet, as with all legends, there is a darker, more unsettling reality lying just beneath the surface. The truth is, Tiber Septim was no hero. His rise was built on the backs of the broken and the slaughtered. His empire was not forged through noble ideals, but through ruthless conquest, deceit, and manipulation. The myths may paint him as a unifier, but his empire relied on fear, oppression, and betrayal, a legacy written in blood. Tiber Septim may be revered, but in reality he was a monster. Little more than a brute cloaked in the garb of a king, a god born from a lie. Together we will examine how his reign of blood left a trail of devastation, broken promises, and shattered lives in its wake. But first, a quick word from today's sponsor. Are you tired of having to bow down to false human gods? Sick of being lorded over by round ears with the life expectancy of a rodent? Then you should consider joining the Thalmor. Enjoy the chance to travel Tamriel, meet interesting new people, and slay them where they stand. Together, we can put the elves back on top where they belong. All you need to do is text TOWER to 2929 11718. That's TOWER to 2929 11718. Now, back to the video. Tiber Septim, also commonly known as Talos, is celebrated for his achievement of unifying a fractured Tamriel after centuries of chaos and anarchy. He forged an empire that spanned the entire continent, ushering in a new era of stability. The Nords honour him as the greatest son of Skyrim, the epitome of strength and honour, while Imperials revere him as their greatest ever ruler. His exploits are immortalised in tales of unyielding conquest and cunning diplomacy. From the storming of Old Hroldan to his subjugation of Morrowind, Hammerfell and the Somerset Isles, Tiber Septim's banner of the Red Diamond rose far above all rivals. His ascension to godhood as Talos, one of the 9 divines, cemented his place as a cultural and religious cornerstone for the empire. He is remembered not only as a conqueror, but as a god, embodying the strength and resilience of mankind. Yet, behind this grand narrative lies another story, one whose pages are drenched in blood, whose words are etched in lies. The glorious facade of the Septim Empire conceals the monstrous price paid for his vision of unity, a house of cards which may be about to collapse entirely. There is an old saying, 1 death is a tragedy, 1,000,000 is a statistic. And by that measure, Tiber Septim was perhaps Tamriel's most accomplished statistician. His empire was built on a mountain of corpses, each conquest justified by the promise of unity, but achieved only through bloodshed and ruthless ambition. The tale begins not with Tiber the Emperor, but Talos the General. He began his military career as a warrior in the service of the petty king Cuchulainn of Falkreath. By the age of 20, he was already leading armies in the field. His most notable early victory was the Battle of Old Hroldan, when he seized the supposedly impenetrable bastion from the Reachmen after a fierce struggle. Legends say that he used the voice to shout down the walls of the fortress, allowing his men to flood inside and butcher the defenders. Some tales even say he summoned a storm around himself, which protected him from the Reachmen's arrows, a feat which would earn him the nickname Talos Stormcrown. Soon after, Talos became Cuchulainn's right hand, guiding his armies to victory and paving the way for his lord to claim the ruby throne of Cyrodiil. This period of history was known as the Interregnum, a time of chaos when Cyrodiil was divided between petty kings and squabbling nobles. In Tiber Septim, Cuchulainn saw the sword that he needed to unite the land and form a new empire. But Cuchulainn would soon discover that swords can cut both ways. The official histories tell us that Cuchulainn died at the hands of a Breton assassin, with Talos escaping gravely injured. As the Pocket Guide to the Empire recalls, From the smouldering ruin he came, one hand to his neck and with Cuchulainn's crown in the other. The legions wept at the sight. His northern magic had saved him, but the voice that led them would be more silent from that night on. His word could no longer rout an army with a roar, but he could still command one with a whisper. He took for himself a Cyrodiilic name, Tiber Septim, and the Nordic name of kings, Ysmir, the Dragon of the North. And with those names he took too the red diamond crown of the Cyrodiils and became their true emperor. Yet this timing seems almost too perfect. Some whisper that Tiber himself arranged his lord's demise to clear his path to power. A single act of treachery eclipsed by the grandeur of his conquests. After all, history is written by the victors, and Talos ensured that his version of events would become gospel. Once crowned, Talos turned his gaze outward, unleashing his armies on the fractured provinces of Tamriel. His early campaigns were brutal and decisive. Talos met the combined armies of Skyrim and High Rock on the field of Sancre-Tor. When they saw him use the Thu'um, the Nords abruptly switched sides to join with Talos, recognizing him as a son of Skyrim. The Jarls of Skyrim soon fell in line, one by one, bowing to the power of the Dragonborn Emperor. High Rock's noble houses, fractious and easily divided, would be no match for Tiber's disciplined legions. Yet although Talos gave the Nords mercy, his treatment of the defeated Bretons was harsh. As told in the Battle of Sancre-Tor, the High Rock battle mage command was summarily executed, and the captive Bretons imprisoned or sold into slavery. While he could be gracious to his allies, his cruelty to his enemies knew no bounds. The annexation of Hammerfell was less a feat of military might than a calculated exploitation of division. After High King Thassad's death, Hammerfell descended into a civil war between the loyalist crowns, led by Prince Ator, and the reformist forebears. Sensing an opportunity, Tiber Septim sided with the forebears, providing military aid in exchange for territorial concessions. The Empire's forces, bolstered by the dragon general Nephalilagus, crushed the crowns at the Battle of Stros Makai. Prince Ator was slain, and the Red Guards fell under imperial rule, governed by the Emperor's appointees. Yet soon resistance flared. The Restless League, led by the siblings Cyrus and Isara, assassinated the imperial governor. Only then did Talos offer a treaty, granting Hammerfell limited autonomy, but only on his terms. This bitter peace was the culmination of years of bloodshed and manipulation, a testament to Talos' ruthless pursuit of dominance. With all the human kingdoms under his boot, Talos soon turned his gaze east to the land of Morrowind. He was initially hesitant, due to the power of the Tribunal, the living gods of the Dunmer. But the lure of Morrowind's riches was too much to resist, particularly its rich stores of ebony and glass. Tiber's armies soon crossed the Velothi Mountains into Morrowind, laying waste to the capital of Mournhold. In the burning ruins of the great city, Tiber and his dark elf general Symmachus came across the orphaned Berenzia, the child of the city's rulers. Knowing she may prove a valuable hostage in the future, they took her back to Cyrodiil, to be raised under their watchful eye. Yet soon, both sides reached a stalemate, and chose to end the war at the negotiating table. A peace deal, known as the Armistice, was agreed between Talos and the living god Vivec. Morrowind agreed to become a province of the Empire, yet it would be permitted an unprecedented level of autonomy, allowed to retain its laws and customs, such as the worship of the Tribunal and the institution of slavery. With this uneasy peace in place, Talos was free to continue his relentless wars of expansion. More than half of Tamriel was under Tiber Septim's control, but he would be unable to complete his conquest of Tamriel through his own skill or cunning. The greatest power opposing him were the High Elves of Alinor, and he knew it would be impossible to prevail against them in a conventional war. The strength of the High Elven mages and their naval prowess would make an amphibious invasion a doomed endeavour from the start. It was only through a backroom deal with Vivec that Tiber would find a solution to this obstacle. The Numidium, a giant Dwemer automaton, which was secretly handed over to the Empire as part of the armistice with Morrowind. The Numidium was used to devastating effect. In the year 896 of the Second Era, Tiber activated the giant golem near the Khajiit city of Rimmon, using as its power source an enormous artificial soul gem known as the Mantella. It's not exactly clear what happened, but it's safe to assume that this was not good for the local Khajiit, to put it mildly. Elsewhere was perhaps the bloodiest battlefield of the Tiber Wars, and the Empire seemed to have little regard for the catfolk of the province. The sack of the city of Senchal was said to be so brutal that it was stricken from official imperial records. But one former legionary claimed to have personally killed 30 Khajiit in the sack, adding, "Man, woman, coupling." It made no difference. In the end, it seems that for Talos' armies, the Khajiit were regarded as beasts instead of people. From here, the Numidium began its long march to Somerset, where it smashed the High Elves into submission. Again, our sources are limited, but it's safe to assume that the destruction was enormous. The High Elves are a proud people, even arrogant, and would not willingly bow to human rule unless the alternative was complete annihilation. We will never truly know how many innocents would be killed in these wars, but one thing is clear. Tiber Septim's hands are stained red with the blood of the conquered. Yet, the destruction wrought by the Numidium did not stop at Somerset. It is said that Tiber Septim began using the Numidium to crush royals and nobles across Tamriel, allowing him to replace them with his own loyalists. According to one source, Tiber's imperial battle mage Zurin Arctus was appalled by these crimes and rose up in rebellion. In the ensuing struggle, both Zurin and the Numidium were destroyed, and pieces of the construct were scattered across the continent. Without the Numidium, the Septim Empire would never again be able to reach the same peak of power, and, in the long run, although the construct was instrumental in building this new empire, it was little use in holding it together. After all, ancient Dwemer automatons are no basis for a system of government. Still, there was one people that maintained limited independence, the Argonians of Blackmarsh. It's true that the Empire claimed victory over the lizard folk, but this is somewhat stretching the truth. Though the border regions of Blackmarsh fell to the legions with little resistance, the Emperor's armies were unable to penetrate its depths. The interior of the province is a land of fetid swamps, full of hostile wildlife and diseases deadly to humans. Knowing it would be impossible to march an army into that green hell, Talos was forced to settle with only a partial occupation, and his rule over the Argonians was largely in name only. So what does all of this tell us about the character of Tiber Septim? Well, above all, that he was a man driven by an unyielding vision, a Tamriel united under his banner. Yet, this dream came at an unfathomable cost. From the sack of Senchal to the devastation of the Numidium, his pursuit of conquest left a trail of destruction. He was a ruler who saw mortal lives, even those of the innocent, as acceptable sacrifices on the altar of his ambition. His ascent began with treachery, betraying Kula Khan to claim the throne, and his conquests would be marked by the same ruthless pragmatism. Some may defend Tiber Septim, justifying his actions as a necessary evil. After all, he was an emperor, and empires are built through war, not peace. To criticize an emperor for killing is like criticizing a farmer for cutting down wheat. It's part of the job description after all. But even if we accept this, Septim's personal life also shows him to be a cruel and callous figure, and nowhere is this more apparent than in his treatment of Baron Zaya. We've already touched on Talos' brutal sack of Mournhold and his capture of Baron Zaya. A young child at the time, she was found amidst the devastation and taken under the care of Tiber's trusted general Symmachus. The official history, crafted and curated by imperial scribes, paints this as a benevolent act of mercy. In their telling, the orphan princess was taken to Skyrim to be raised as a model vassal, preparing her for a future role as a loyal subject of the Empire. But the unofficial story, revealed in the real Baron Zaya, tells a far darker tale. This account suggests that Baron Zaya's time under imperial care was anything but nurturing. When she was brought to the imperial city, Tiber Septim himself took an unsettling interest in the teenage Dunmeri princess. Despite their significant age difference and the power imbalance between them, the two soon began an affair, a relationship marked by coercion and exploitation. According to this account, Baron Zaya soon became pregnant, only for Tiber to arrange for the pregnancy to be terminated without her consent. This revelation casts Tiber's treatment of Baron Zaya in a starkly different light. turning what the Empire framed as an act of compassion into an exercise in exploitation. His relationship with Berenzyre exemplifies the manipulative tendencies that defined his reign. You might even say that for a man who probably never swung a pickaxe in his life, Tiber Septim seems to have been rather fond of miners. While Berenzyre would eventually return to Mournhall to rule as its queen, the monarchs of Morrowind would be little more than imperial puppets. Even after Tiber's death, the spectre of his influence lingered over her life. She was never able to truly escape the shadow of the man who destroyed her home all those years ago. But it isn't just Tiber Septim the man we need to question. Talos the God is also a figure that demands scrutiny. The official story of Tiber Septim's apotheosis is well-trodden territory. Upon his death at the venerable age of 108, Tiber was said to have ascended to Aetherios as Talos, becoming the ninth divine, securing his place among the pantheon of gods. It is said that the land itself mourned his passing, with rains falling for 2 weeks, as if Tamriel was weeping for its greatest emperor. His deeds and legacy were sanctified, ensuring his worship across the empire. But as with so much of history, the truth may be far darker than the story the empire tells. Critics of the official narrative whisper that Tiber Septim's apotheosis was little more than imperial propaganda, a means to cement his legacy and use religion to solidify the empire's control. They claim that Talos is no god, merely a false idol whose worship undermines the established divines. Their argument raises troubling questions about the man behind the myth. The Arcturian heresy presents a strikingly different account of Tiber Septim's rise and reign, one that challenges the established narrative of his divinity. This gets a little bit complicated, and its validity is controversial, so we'll boil it down to the basics. According to one interpretation of the heresy, Talos was not one man at all, but a combination of 3: Hjalti Earlybeard, a shrewd tactician and skilled warrior; Zurin Arctus, the cunning battle mage who served as his advisor; and Ismir Wolfhearth, the ancient and undead High King of Skyrim, who, according to the heresy, is also the Underking. This narrative claims that Talos' legendary feats, his ability to shout down walls, his invincibility in battle, and his mastery of statecraft, were not the deeds of one man, but the combined efforts of these 3 figures. It even suggests that Hjalti, who became the face of Talos that we now know as Tiber Septim, betrayed both Zurin and Wolfhearth to seize power for himself. It is also said that the Mantella, the soul gem used to power the Numidium and conquer Tamriel, may contain the soul of one, or both, of his former allies, sacrificed in order to fuel his ambitions. This version of events paints a chilling picture of betrayal and manipulation, with Tiber Septim's ascension being less a divine act and more of a masterclass in deception and propaganda. The Empire's narrative recasts acts of treachery as miracles, reducing his victims to mere footnotes in the narrative. But what if Talos' divinity is not only a lie, but a dangerous one? The Thalmor believe so, arguing that Talos' worship perpetuates human defiance against the natural order of the Aorbis. While their motives are certainly tainted by a desire to dismantle the Empire, and perhaps even bring Nirn itself crashing down, their claim that Talos is a false god cannot be entirely dismissed. If the Arcturian heresy holds even a kernel of truth, then Talos was not the divine saviour the Empire proclaims. Instead, he may be its ultimate deceiver, a man who climbed to power on the backs of others, crowning himself emperor, rewriting history so that he may wear the mantle of a god. But is it really enough to just say that Talos was bad, that he was a brute, that he was a monster? Perhaps we need to cast our net a little wider, and call into question the concept of the Empire itself. It's often assumed that the Empire is a force for stability and progress, but is this really true? From its first incarnation, the Empire has painted itself as a unifying force. But when we dig a little bit beneath the surface, we uncover something far uglier. The spread of the Empire has always been accompanied by the suppression of local cultures and languages. Traditions are rewritten, histories erased, and cultural identities sacrificed on the altar of imperial unity. For example, for most of history, Cyrodiil has been split between 2 human cultures: the Clovians of the Western Highlands and the Nibonese of the Eastern River Basins. But by the end of the Third Era, Cyrodiil has become almost completely culturally homogenized. Similar stories can be told of the cultures of places like Skyrim and High Rock. This isn't unity, it's assimilation, the Empire slowly digesting the cultures of the territories it has swallowed. Religion has been a similar battleground. The Empire's insistence on the worship of the 9 divines, and later the 8, imposes a singular worldview on a continent rich with diverse spiritual beliefs. The 4th era demonstrates this starkly. The Nords, who once revered their own pantheon of gods like Shor, Kain and Orki, now seem to overwhelmingly follow the imperial interpretation of the divines. Also, let us not forget that the Empire has a long history of commercial and economic exploitation. For evidence of this, we need look no further than the land of Morrowind, where the Empire's rule seemed to be basically a sophisticated regime of resource extraction. As one source argues, within the ebony mines of Morrowind, bloated monopolies under imperial charters exploit slave labour to harvest the outrageous profits assured by rampant graft and corruption. According to this interpretation, the Empire has one purpose, and one purpose alone: to bleed its provinces dry. And, for all its claims of enlightenment, the Empire has often turned a blind eye to atrocities, most disturbingly, the practice of slavery. Throughout the Third Empire's history, slavery has been legal in Morrowind, where Dunmer keep Argonians and Khajiit in chains, and the Empire has benefited directly from the goods they produce. As we discussed earlier, Tiber himself was no stranger to this practice, selling Breton prisoners of war into servitude. This tacit acceptance of slavery exposes the Empire's moral decay, its willingness to tolerate oppression for the sake of expediency. History has proven that all empires are doomed to fail. The First Empire collapsed under its own weight, the Second fell into chaos and anarchy. And now, in the Fourth era, the Third Empire is but a shadow of its former self, reeling from the Oblivion crisis and the Great War. The cracks in its foundation have widened into gaping wounds. Empires cannot endure indefinitely, because ultimately they are built on domination and destruction, and eventually you run out of people to conquer. In the Elder Scrolls Morrowind, the Nerevarine meets an old Legion veteran named Wolf at the temple outpost of Ghostgate. But this was no mere man. It was revealed to be an avatar of Talos himself. He confessed to the Nerevarine that the Empire's time may be nearing its end. Maybe it's time for a change, he suggests. Time for something young and new. What? No idea. Because I'm old. Old dog doesn't get new ideas. But maybe young fools like you should try some new ideas. Could be messy, but change is never pretty. He's not speaking here as an emperor or god, but as a tired old man reflecting on the imperfections of his legacy. So what if the Empire, with all its flaws and contradictions, cannot endure what comes next? Perhaps Tamriel is destined to return to a world of independent kingdoms, each free to forge its own destiny. Or maybe new leaders and new systems of government will rise from the ashes. In the end, perhaps we should heed the warning of this old man. We should not seek to worship Talos as a god, but to understand him as a man, a myth and a symbol, acknowledging his achievements, his failings, and the need to learn from the mistakes of the past. In many ways, the story of the Elder Scrolls is the story of the Empire, and like all empires before it, it is destined to fall. The wheel of history will keep on turning, but in its wake, perhaps Tamriel has the opportunity to build something new, to build something better. Thank you for watching. I'd like to thank everyone who's tuned in over the last few weeks. Please like and subscribe so I can continue to bring you more videos on the Elder Scrolls. And feel free to let me know in the comments if there are any topics you would like to see covered here. And until next time, wealth beyond measure.